Hey, Danny McMahon. How are you?
Good. How are you, Joe?
Good. You ready for another stage of the Bike Shop Society podcast?
I'm ready. I got my leg shaved.
Uh huh.
I got the Embro, hot, spicy embrocation,
Yeah,
rubbed all over because it's winter.
Yeah, I guess it's that time of the year.
I just don't want to get it in my eyes or my crotch.
Has that happened to you? Have you had that happen?
Not really. I had
No?
probably a teeny tiny bit
Uh-huh.
get into the Netherlands at one point, but I've heard stories of
Yeah,
people
oh man, it's horrible.
mistaking it or confusing it or in the mad rush to get ready for a race. Thinking it's chamois cream or they didn't wash their hands thoroughly enough, that kind of thing.
That happens a lot. I've had it where I've maybe embroed with maybe boxers on and then put my shorts on and it kind of skims the chamois on the way up. And man, oh man, you are reminded that it takes a little while to kick in, you know,
Yes.
and it's just like, whoa, you know, yeah, that stuff really works. It turns out that stuff really works.
It reminds me of edibles. I don't partake, but I know some folks talk about edibles and
Hmm.
like the rookie mistake is like, oh, I'm not feeling anything. I'll take some more
Oh,
because they take a
dude.
while to kick in.
Oh, that happened to me. That happened to me first summer of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, wow, we're almost 3 summers into it. This will be our third summer of pandemic bike shopping, running a bike shop during a pandemic. Third
Unbelievable.
summer. That's crazy. But the first summer, it was insane. Um, we were spending just ridiculous hours at the shop late, sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning at the shop. And someone had stopped by earlier in the day and given me one of these chocolate, like just a little chocolate, a small chocolate bar, like a half of a, like maybe half of or a quarter of a Hershey's bar, like the size of like a quarter of a normal size Hershey bar.
Mm.
So it didn't seem, and really thin. So it didn't really seem like much,
So it was like cannabis chocolate.
cannabis chocolate.
Okay.
And I'd never really played around with edibles. I'm old school, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Roll that shit up and go for it. But uh, so the edible thing was pretty new to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what 10 grams versus 20 grams, or I didn't know what it was.
Right.
Late at night, nothing to eat around the shop. This guy had given me some chocolate. I'm like, well, I just, what's it going to hurt? And that square was broken up into four different, little squares. And I popped I popped one off and I had one of the little ones because I was trying to be careful. And I had one and zero effect. Like it didn't feel like anything. 10, 15 minutes go by. I'm like, this is nothing. I still have some tolerance to this stuff, I was kind of proud of myself. I'm like, yeah, nothing's gonna knock me out.
You
Um,
were like a Russian dude having a light beer.
yeah. I was
You're
like,
like, it's
This
nothing.
is nothing. This is
Nothing.
nothing. And so I had the rest of the three little squares. I'm like, man, this is nothing. Well,
Wait, so you had one, didn't do anything, and then
yeah.
you jumped to three.
Well, I was a little hungry. I was like,
Well, I was gonna say paradoxically, you get the munchies when you're
probably,
high.
yeah.
So you ate this to satisfy some urge
Mm-hmm.
for food, some craving, and
Yep.
okay. So go on.
And I have the three remaining ones, and I just popped it, and I kind of picked up my head, and it like an hour and a half had gone by. Oh, it's crazy,
Welcome to the Twilight Zone.
and I realized that I was so higher than a kite, man.
What time? What's the timeline here? Was this a half hour later?
Maybe an hour and a half later.
Oh, okay. So it took a while.
Oh, it took it took a while for me to like realize what was like what had happened to me. I was in the zone, music was going, I
Oh
was working.
yeah.
Oh
Do you
man.
remember the very first like moment you realized, oh, I'm really high? Like, did you like turn like from the bike rack or the bike stand? Did you like do something where did you remember the moment you were like, oh boy, I'm really
I'm in
high?
trouble.
Where things went whoosh, like whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, like I was in serious I was like, "Oh my god, I'm in I'm in trouble here. Like I have definitely taken too much. Like this is, I had no idea how to gauge it. I just didn't know how
Hmm.
this stuff worked, and and so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to keep working until it dies down. But I just kept surging. It was like a tsunami. I got to the point where I was worried, Danny. I was like, oh my
A
God,
little
this is
paranoia, a little anxiety,
a little bit of everything because it was,
panic.
I, I wasn't, I, I still had my senses about me because I realized I cannot drive home
Mm-hmm.
because if I drive home and I get pulled over, I will not be able to come to work. This would be a disaster because
That'd be bad.
I have 50 bikes waiting to get
Oh,
fixed.
that'd be
I
very
have
bad.
just piles of bikes. The load at work was just insane, and there's just no way I could go to the clink. Uh, and so I, I decided to just park it. I'm like, okay, I'm stuck until I come down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not come down. It just would not, like it just didn't cease.
Yeah. So unrelenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, were you solo at this point?
Yeah, it was late at
The
night.
person who was there earlier left.
Yeah, by this time it was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, you were there all night.
Well, yeah, because this was
Woof.
like this was in the evening. Maybe when I took this, it was maybe, I don't know, 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh,
And
that
then,
that kind of makes sense.
I took it like maybe around 9. It was late. I was hungry.
Did you have to call an Uber to get home or what?
I did. And the thing is that
Hello, sir.
it took
What are
me,
you doing here?
it took me until like 3 o'clock in the morning where I was like, wait a second. I can call an Uber and it can take me home. I didn't want to bug my wife. I didn't want to call my wife and say, "Hey, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm like super stoned. Come and pick me up at the
yeah.
bike
It's
shop."
like I'm 18 again.
Yeah,
I'm at the Chicago Ridge
I was
Mall.
honestly, I was a little ashamed of myself. I'm like, what did I get myself into?
Hey, babe.
Uh-huh.
What are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Watching all the Netflix there, waiting for me.
It was like being in high school again,
I got something to tell you.
And I just, yeah. Well, finally, I had to call an Uber, and unfortunately, he got me home. But man, I
Now,
mean,
were you able to go to sleep right away, or were you up pretty late, or what?
yeah, no, I think I went to sleep.
Okay.
I was just happy to be. Yeah, I mean, I just tucked myself in and set an alarm because I had to. It was an unrelenting pace
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Bike shops we were under fire, and
Yeah.
um, if people don't, for people that are out there and maybe don't realize what we were dealing with that particular summer was just, we had never gone through that.
Service up the wazoo.
Yeah, and then finding parts and looking for
Yeah,
parts, and
whole other thing too.
yeah,
Yeah,
there was
right.
a bike shortage, and
Which persists to this day.
very much so. And there were a lot of new customers, so you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of customers who just never, not bike shop people, not people that come to bike shops normally, and people were under a lot of stress. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
the customers
And
coming
then
in,
they have the whole mask thing and
yeah,
touching. There was a lot of, I don't want to say hysteria. Maybe there was some hysteria, but people were just anxious.
yeah,
They
people,
were, it was really awkward and kind of difficult. You didn't know what to do early on,
Mhm.
especially when it started to really elevate and
Well,
the cases got out of hand. And
this was midsummer probably when this episode happened.
2020.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the middle of the summer. We were well into it. We were kind of dealing with the problems. That the after bike shops were called essential,
Essential, yes.
and we were allowed to stay open. That was maybe late March or late March of that year. It's still early in the season. March, April.
Yep.
I mean, it's still
Around here, for
It's
sure.
still cold. So
Yeah.
you didn't have your casual cyclists coming
You
out.
were still using your nipple test
Yes.
for the weather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Too cold.
And if you don't know what that is,
Uh,
Joe decides if he's going to ride, if it's too cold for him to ride or not, based on whether his nipples are hard.
Yeah, it's like one of those turkey little pop up things on the turkey. That's how you know when it's
Yes,
done.
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, yes.
Very similar to that.
Oh my God.
But March and April was very nice because it was strictly the regulars.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that actually ride all the what I would call a cyclist.
Yes.
They're generally out early.
Mm-hmm.
They know to get their bike in early to get it
Yep.
fixed. And so they want to beat the hordes.
Yep.
And they would come in and they were very thankful. Oh, thank you for being open. I appreciate you being here. Thanks
That's
for being.
cool.
Yeah, that was very nice. But by May and June, that had all gone away, and it was being replaced by people kind of yelling at us and expect.
Man.
Just there were people that just weren't used to. There were a lot of people that weren't used to coming to bike shops. There weren't. They it never. They would never come to a bike shop.
Right.
Except for the fact that there was a pandemic going on. They were stuck at home with their kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed a way to get their kids out of the house or get out of the house themselves.
Right. Right.
They were just looking for a way out.
And you have, I think you have a pretty small shop.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that kind of a factor? Like, did you have a lot of people online? Was there
We
just
did
like
everything
anxiety?
outside. We did everything outside.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Mhm. So I had to put a chain up at the door,
Mm-hmm.
and we just conducted all of our business outside. And
Oh, great.
The inside of the shop was strictly
Mhm.
employees and maybe friends of FOSs, friends of shop.
Oh, nice.
A handful.
FOSs, I like that. So I was just going to say, I saw some shops in the city doing that. So
Mhm.
I was going to ask, because I didn't really see you around that time that much at all, I think.
No, nobody saw anybody at that time. I think we were all in our bunkers, and we were either. And at that time, you were working. Whoever was working like overtime.
Yep.
And whoever wasn't working was getting fat and watching Netflix.
That's me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't. There wasn't a whole lot of in between at that time. It just seemed like anybody who was working really, really hard, and whoever wasn't,
Right.
was like praying for work. So it was a rough stretch at
Wow.
that time.
Yeah. I love how we went from hot, spicy embrocation
Mm-hmm.
to weed or cannabis
Mm-hmm.
edibles
Mm-hmm.
to essential bike shops during the pandemic, essential businesses.
Yeah.
What I don't know, was it not a big deal when they kind of announced, when the government's like, bike shops are essential businesses? Like, what was your reaction?
It was-
Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was. I was happy, but it was funny to me at
Mhm.
the time. Like to be called essential. We were essential business.
Mhm.
I didn't really take it seriously. Like, oh my God, we're essential. It was more like tongue in cheek. Like, oh, we're essential.
Right.
But we were certainly happy that we were open.
I can imagine. Yeah, for sure.
We were allowed to stay open, and knowing bike shops the way that I do, a lot of them, I think that even if they had not allowed to be, would not have been allowed to be open, I think a lot of shops would have had arrangements
Mm-hmm.
to try to stay in business.
Yep.
Because, for a lot of bike shops, for most bike shops, it's a matter of survival.
Yeah.
Nobody's, very few people are rich in this business, if any.
I was gonna say, like, even in quote unquote normal times,
Even in normal times.
it's a tough business to be in.
It's a tough racket. It's a really dumb business in the Midwest, in the Chicago area. It's a really dumb business in the Midwest.
Well, it's like we have like 2 months of awesome biking weather, and then it's like
it's a seasonal business.
Yeah.
It's 6 months a year where you're actually, where people are coming in and buying stuff, and then it's 6 months of hold on tight.
Mhm.
Like make your money. You better budget it right
You're like a squirrel gathering nuts
Yep.
for the winter.
all summer long. And then you got to get really small in the winter, and it makes it tough. I mean, there are some shops that are able to hold on to all their staff, and
Yeah.
in the winter time, but for the most part, I think, especially smaller shops in Chicago, they kind of count on people going away, having something fun to do in the winter, and hopefully coming back in the spring, and coming back to work in the spring full time.
Yeah, for sure.
But most people are, they're cutting staff hours, have a core of maybe one or two guys, and then the rest supplement with seasonal help.
Yeah.
And kind of friends, and
Yeah, I definitely wanted at some point, either today or someday in the future, but I definitely wanted to do a deep dive and really unpack and kind of pick your brain about. So there's pandemic, which we're still in, very much so, I would say, and there's that aspect, and having a bike shop, and going back, I remember I called you when I did that article. I did an article on Canyon Bikes
Yeah.
when they opened up in the U.S. and North America. And
Yeah.
I wanted to reach out to a handful of shop owners, and you were one of the people, I reached out to. And I remember you had some interesting comments. For example, you were saying like, but your bike shop now is kind of like, it's mostly like kind of service. You do
Mm-hmm.
sell bikes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of service, and sometimes it's like almost like a convenience store. I think is the way you kind of phrase it. Like people come in and they see like there's just like like an inner tube or some glasses or a helmet. There's just like kind of things around there like peripheral.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the bigger thing I was going for though is I'd love to talk more about because we've talked in the previous podcast how we grew up before the internet,
Mm-hmm.
and we're very happy for that.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's if you look at the arc, it's crazy looking back 1, 2, 3, 4 decades. So now everything's like so much is online,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about showrooming. People coming in looking at IRL bikes and then going home buying it online because they can maybe find a better deal.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm just I want to at some point talk more about how you see all this and like how you fit in and what you see as like the purpose of your shop and also how you've managed to survive, especially during the pandemic. But you have the Amazons. Every time it seems I look online, there's like another brand on Amazon, or at least
Yeah.
doing click to doorstep. Specialized just recently announced that they're doing the kind of Canyon model where you can.
February 1st.
That's right.
It
So
just,
you
just
can
happened.
yeah. So you can buy a bike and have it shipped to your house.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, to kind of keep it cohesive though, like yeah, I'm just kind of interested in how you've been able to do it. And you also have interesting experience because you worked at a lot of shops. And then now you have your own and you've
Mm-hmm.
had it for how many years now? How long have you had that shop?
Dozen.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's crazy. But it's just fascinating to me because and it's a theme we talked about before and I think we'll always come back to. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this eternal thing where it's like, yes, you can go online. There's all these places. I was just recently looking at the Pros Closet, a site you've probably seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's cool sites like that, and there's
Bike exchange.
Bike Exchange,
eBay is the first
eBay,
one.
Craigslist, even although
Mhm.
that's a little bit of a wild west.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But bike shops are still there, and they're still, in my mind, they're still relevant. And
Oh,
they're
dude.
still important.
I'm actually super excited about the coming years. I'm down for disruption. I'm down for whatever is going to happen because it's the way that the bicycle business was going before was not sustainable.
Right.
It was just a slow death. And you know, knock me out and shoot me in the head, or let's fix this thing. Let's force this thing into the future. And we've been moved like we've been moved drastically into the future. We're not there yet. So the bike is, the industry isn't where it should be, but it's forced people to to get stuff done, like Specialized. All right, if you're headed to direct to consumer, just do it. Do it already. Rip the bandage off. Do it. Tell your dealers, cut your dealers off. Do what you need to do. Burn the bridges.
Yep.
Get your business straight.
Mhm.
Let's know where you stand,
Hmm.
so that we can adjust. So that we can. All right, I can sell against that, or I can work with that.
It's lit a fire under some businesses' butts.
A lot. Everybody has had to tighten up. Every bike shop, any every business, and it's not just bike shops. Everybody who wanted to stay in business, who's been trying to stay in business during this, has had to look at everything that they do, examine everything that they do, and figure out, okay, what's making me money? Where am I losing money?
Mm.
Everyone's had to tighten their belt a little bit, and that includes bike shops. And probably, and I think most bike shops right now are as good as they've been in a long time. I guarantee you, there are bike shops out there, mine included. I know how many 16-inch inner tubes I have right now.
Wow.
Like I've counted
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
just have never been on the radar
That's
before,
wild.
because it's forced you to
Yep.
tighten up a little, button up
Yep.
certain things where you just couldn't afford to have a lot of leakage, or just things that weren't making money. And because you've had to be essential, you understand better what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yep.
What makes you money, what doesn't make you money. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? The beauty of what's happening now is that we've realized that there are tons of cyclists, tons.
Mhm.
There are a lot of new cyclists.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot of new people riding now. They're more educated than ever, so they know what a bicycle shopping experience for a nice bike should be like because they've watched the video
Yep.
on YouTube.
Yep.
They've learned, and so they kind of know walking into a bike shop what questions to ask and what kind of answers they should be getting.
Isn't it crazy? You mentioned this when I interviewed you for the article I wrote, which,
Mhm.
by the way, not that I'm pushing people to read it, but if people are curious about it, it's on Business Insider where I used to work, and it's about Canyon bikes. So you can
Mhm.
probably find it with a Google search. But I went really in depth with it. It was a very long feature, and I talked to a ton of people, and I incorporated like riding the bike that they sent me as like a test review thing.
Mhm.
But one of the things I just lost my train of thought. Oh no! But one of the things you did mention was, yeah. So these days, consumers know more than the bike shop employees in some instances because they're armed. They can go online,
Mhm.
and this goes for probably anything you buy these days in any industry. But it is fascinating because back in the day, we kind of talked a little bit in previous podcasts, like about the cachet that bike shops used to have. Like
Mhm.
it was kind of like this secret knowledge almost. Like you were kind of intimidated in some ways, like, oh hey, what's Dura Ace? Like, what's this component group, or what's that, or how does that work? And it felt like this person was like the town wizard, and they
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
able to like tell you all these things. But then fast forward now, so like people have so much access to information, YouTube videos, and they come in and they're armed. It's like going to buy cars has changed a lot too, and obviously you have the Teslas, which sell online and they bypass the car dealerships and all that kind of thing. But that resonated with me. It was very interesting when you said that because sometimes I do go into bike shops, and obviously I'm a little different because I'm kind of in the game as it were. But I will go in, and sometimes the folks, they don't know a lot about the bikes.
Mhm.
And they're busy doing lots of other things. It's just an interesting time we live in.
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of product out there, so to
Yes,
pretend like I know everything about every bike is, that's impossible.
there are so many bikes.
And there's too many bikes. I mean, in some
There's too
cases,
many bikes. There's too many. You know what really gets me?
mm,
Sorry to interrupt, but too many apparel brands. How many apparel brands do we need? I swear to God, every day it seems like there's a brand new apparel brand.
yeah, I don't,
They're bib shorts. Let's move on.
well, you know what it is. I think, well, when it comes to apparel, I think that it's, it's kind of like bikes. There's only a handful of factories, but there's a
Yes.
lot of different brands, and so everyone's just,
Different
they're,
stickers.
yeah, I'll make a custom jersey. But my theme will be anime.
Yes. Yes.
And now I created this
Hot
brand.
pink.
Yeah, it's so
And I'm not knocking anyone trying to start a business. Don't get me wrong.
mhm,
I'm just saying, like from like a consumer slash, I guess, journalist point of view,
mhm.
it literally every day I'll have like a new press release or something in my inbox, and it's like we're launching a new apparel brand, and it literally seems like there are hundreds or thousands of apparel brands, and it just becomes kind of crazy. It's like I don't know how many sneaker makers do we need? I
Well,
mean,
I think
it's
I
a
think actually I think it's a different model. So I don't know that they are so much like a jersey brand or a clothing brand as much as a brand that aligns with your beliefs.
mm-hmm.
So they are not necessarily selling you a jersey; they're selling you their
Ah,
story.
I see where you're going.
You know, because
Good marketing.
yeah, I just dealt with that with a sock company the other day. There, I saw something somewhere about some brand of socks and they had teamed up with a bike shop and they were putting out a a sock, you know,
A cycling sock.
it's a cycling sock, but it's just got some graphic on there,
Sure.
and it was a collaboration, they called it.
Oh,
Where
collab.
it was a collab,
The collab is huge.
and I looked up the sock company, but it turns out it wasn't a sock company. It's just somebody with a website, and they
Mhm.
have 8 or 10 socks that they sell.
Okay.
And then I inquired with a friend who's in the sock game, And he's like, "Oh no, they make those at so and so fact, so and so makes
Right,
them for
right,
them."
right.
And so really, like I can make
Yeah,
anybody can get a custom sock made. All you
yeah,
got to do is order 60 at a time,
yeah,
and then you can have your own sock.
yeah.
You have your own sock company. You could be, and if you want to put a website up, and then you can have, you know,
Joe's hot pink neon socks.
well, whatever, and then I can market it to, if I build a little story about adventure and
Get an
a
influencer.
big city or, and then I'm selling sock. I'm in the sock game. And then I hire a jersey company to make me a jersey and I hire somebody else. And as long as these companies will make you whatever you want as long as you order enough.
Yeah, I think part of the thing that I'm also seeing and reacting to, I guess, is if you spend enough time on some social platforms, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you're just inundated, with the ads,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all targeted, of course. I get that, and I just feel like every day
You're being fed that.
I'm like people are. It's like throwing in your face, like just
Yeah.
hey, here's a new bike brand,
Oh,
new wheels,
yeah.
new tires, new helmets, and I don't know. It's
It's
I don't really
overwhelming.
have a point. It's just kind of overwhelming. And
And
I'm kind of like, can I just turn this off? I know that's how social works.
uh-huh.
Your data,
And
it's free for a reason.
that's my hope for the future, Danny, is that it's going to overwhelm people it's going to overwhelm people so much that it's going to force them to someone like me to make sense of it all for them and be like, I just want to ride a bike.
You're the sage. They'll
You're the
come to
guy,
you.
you've been here for 15, 20 years. You've been doing this your whole life. Can you tell me what I need to learn? And I'm more than happy. I had somebody in the shop today that, he's been riding for a long, long time. And he's like overwhelmed with the stuff that he sees online. And he just wanted to come to the bike shop and talk, see if he could find someone
Okay, I love this.
that could help him
Yes.
because he can't make sense of all these new brands. He actually said all these new brands that I don't recognize.
Yeah, well, that's and obviously branding is
Uh-huh.
like a whole thing.
Yep.
And so you have loyalists and
Mhm.
then brands survive and they're sustainable because they have good products,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I don't know, I'm going back, but like Reynolds,
Mhm.
Columbus, and then different bike makers and
Well, that's the only
but
reason.
now there's just so many. Like I even go into places and I'm like, I don't recognize like helmets.
Yeah.
There are so many new brands of helmets. I'm like,
And
I
you're
know they're all regulated by whatever
yeah.
body and whatnot, so I know they're all safe. But I'm kind of like, is this gonna be a good helmet? Will this last more than like one season?
And you're a bike
Um,
and you're a bike
and I'm a
guy.
bike guy.
You're a bike person
Yeah,
kind of in the business and paying attention to that stuff and reading reviews. Well, what do you think that the average person feels like?
yeah. Because I remember when we worked in shops. Well, you obviously still work on, but I remember people being like, "Is this a good one?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, "Yeah, actually, we sell that. We recommend that. We like that."
Well, that's what the bike industry doesn't realize. And we talk about this bike industry like it's all
A monolith. Yeah,
one cohesive thing that we're all working in
and
the
it's
same
not.
direction.
Yeah.
Oh, it's horrible, right?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of tug of wars happening. There's
Mhm.
wars. There's huge wars. Trek and Specialized.
Oh yeah.
Hey, it's like there was a time they went around to the shops. It's like it's them or it's us.
Yes.
And so I mean,
Chocolate or vanilla.
yeah, they've got this thing going on between those two.
Yeah.
And so it's not it's not we're not all together. We're not all pulling in the same direction. In fact, we're all pulling in a lot of different directions, and we need to figure out what you need to figure out what. I mean, I guess because I don't think most people that are listening to us own a bicycle shop,
Mhm.
but we need to establish where everybody stands right now. And I think it's a good time to do it because I don't think that there are that some of these big bike companies are necessarily working uh, on my behalf. And then, I mean, they don't care about me. They don't. It's not like they're out there trying to keep me in business or keep a lot of bike shops in business.
Right.
They care about their business,
Yeah.
which I get.
Bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
That story about the guy coming in and just wanting to like talk to like a human and like
Mm-hmm.
find like just some good basic products. It
Yeah.
reminded me of a professor I had at NIU, and he's an Englishman and he's from London, but he's been in Illinois now for decades. But I remember he would tell us His name was Dr. Baker, and he had this great accent, which I don't want to butcher. But he was telling us about his first time in the States, and he talked about going into a supermarket, and he just wanted to buy a loaf of bread, and he went in and he was staring at 40 different kinds like of bread,
Yeah.
and he literally he wasn't being cute. He was literally like, I don't know what's what, and it took him so long just to figure out like what he actually wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked earlier about that paralysis,
Yeah.
right?
Analysis
Analysis
paralysis.
paralysis
Yeah.
for bread. But for bike brands too, and just seeing online all the different stuff coming at you. I don't know. It's just, I don't know if it's just a period we're going through, but it just, I don't know. There's a lot out there.
Well, and
I don't even know what's really that good anymore.
the bike industry has decided to go either really big or they're going big. So bike shops are getting big, square footage wise. There's a big shop going in not too far from us. Big store. I've seen some pictures of the build out from a friend, and it's going to be one of these giant bike stores. Big bike store. From the racks that I saw in there, there's going to be a lot of bicycles in there, a lot of choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's going to be the future of the bicycle business. You're going to see, um, you know, people that own 5, 6 corporations that own 5, 6, 10 stores, 12 stores, 20 stores.
Every time I open up Twitter, or I saw you had a copy of Bicycle Retailer here.
Because I'm a professional, Danny. I
yes,
get that
you are.
magazine.
And you have the paper version.
It's only me. Yeah, I
the
get
print
yeah.
version, which is legit OG.
Yeah.
What was my point? The thing is, every time I open up, I see like Specialized, more so Trek, I think, is buying like regional bike chains.
Oh, they're both doing it. They're
Like a ton on the East Coast. I think I saw like a flurry. They bought like, I don't know, this 6 bike shop chain on Virginia or Jersey or wherever. And it seems like there's a lot of that going on.
There's a lot of consolidation in the bicycle business right now.
Well, we talked about the media part, but that's for another time. But yeah, for bike shops, for sure.
Yeah, I know somebody. We should get him on because he's the wizard in the bike industry. Guy who knows where all the bodies are buried.
Oh,
and
cool.
He can give us a little bit of the lowdown.
I would love that.
Yeah,
because I don't know a lot about it. I know you do, but I would love that, and I think maybe listeners would find that insightful too, because it is kind of a mystery.
Yeah, it is, and even to me, I mean, this guy makes sense of it. He confirms some of my thoughts, and maybe if I have questions, he's a guy who can answer those questions for me, concisely, and he knows facts, and real smart guy.
That's really good. It kind of reminds me, whether you love or hate Elon Musk, but what he did for cars now, bypass the dealerships, and you just go online. You pick the Tesla you want and the color and this and that, and it's really blown up that industry, right?
I think the bike world is I think it's a house of cards.
Mm-hmm.
I think and I'm waiting for one of these big brands to be put into Target. And I'm waiting for the Trek
like a big one.
I'm waiting for the Trek store in Target or the Specialized store in Target. And
Didn't one of them, this is just a smaller thing I was thinking about too, but wasn't there like one of the big brands that went on Amazon or went on into some big retailer, or at least tried to? I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, honestly, I don't pedal in Trek or Specialized, so I don't sell
literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't.
I like the pedal.
Yeah, you like that? I work on them. I'm familiar with the bikes. I don't shun them.
And you're not a hater. You just don't really deal with them.
It's not something that I wanted to sell. I know how those brands work, and I also know the square footage that's required to sell those brands. You just need a big store. You need to represent so many, And also, when I was opening up, I didn't have that kind of money.
Got it. Well, you just threw like 10 questions into my head. Like, how does that relationship work? But before we go there, if we do go there, I thought it was really cool when you talked about this guy coming in. Could we just go back to him real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he just remind us what he was saying and what he wanted, because I kind of see him as almost like a symbolic figure. Like there's so much, you're inundated with so many brands online, and you
He's
just want to ride like a nice, good bike.
he's 30 years. I mean, he's been riding a bike all his life. I mean, he has an old Jamis bike that he bought 20 years ago, some sort of a touring
And it's still
off-road.
trucking.
Still working, but he wants to explore bike packing.
Oh,
I think like a lot of people, they've kind of been online, and YouTube now is now you're at the point where like 60-year-olds are watching YouTube. You know what
Yep,
I mean? Like
for sure.
young people have been watching YouTube for a long time, but YouTube has now become it's on televisions now. It's
Yep.
on a smart TV
I
and
watch YouTube, the YouTube TV app,
Mhm.
probably at least 25. A good third of my viewing on TV is YouTube.
Yeah, or more.
Mhm.
Oh, gee,
I
don't
was
get
I was gonna say at least it's Netflix and that.
Danny. Have you heard about this thing called the golden ticket?
Actually,
There's a guy
is that
named
from Willy Wonka?
No, there's a guy named Simon Cowell, and there's like this talent show called America's Got Talent.
Yes, but I don't know the golden ticket reference.
Well,
I've never watched it.
no, you got to watch
Wait,
that. Oh,
this is the same guy who recently had a second major wipeout on his bike. The British guy.
oh, that's right. He broke his arm or
Again.
something, right? Another
Yeah,
again?
he just had another one like in the past
Wow.
week.
Oh, in the last week.
Yeah, so he had
crashed
one
again?
back in the day.
Yeah,
a
yeah,
year or
really
two
bad,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, and then he just had another pretty bad
Oh,
one.
his videos make me cry, Danny. They make me cry. He's spreading cheer. He's
Yes.
making dreams come true.
Well, he was kind of controversial, right? Because he had like some hot takes. He was kind of like the meaner Ricky Gervais of like that whole TV show
Yeah.
kind of craze. But what's the golden ticket exactly in this context?
I don't know, it's some sort of contest, and
Oh,
the
okay.
winner gets this golden ticket, and then people start crying, and it's usually somebody who's
I want a golden ticket.
oh yeah, it's amazing.
Do you sell golden tickets in your shop?
I give them. I'm gonna install a big plunger button thing where it's like these tickets rain down from the sky.
Can you get like a dunking machine?
I've rented.
Set it up at the back, or in
I've-
the summer when it's hot, have it out front.
I should. I'm gonna rent one of those.
We could
for
put
the-
Steve Dahl in it.
Yeah, I'll rent one for the shop. I'll rent one for the shop. Well, let's go back to the guy.
Yes.
So we were talking about this guy who came into the shop.
Mhm.
I think was that right? Were
Yes.
we talking about that?
Yes.
30 years riding bikes.
Was he about our age or a little older?
Older. I would
60, 65, 70?
Yeah, between 60, 65, I would
Okay.
guess. And he wants to do a little bike touring. He's kind of heard about this stuff and maybe gravel bikes.
What these
and-
kids are doing?
Yeah, just kind of wondering about it. He came in. He wanted to know what the difference between a touring bike and a gravel bike was, and
Mm-hmm.
I had no answer.
a fair
for him
question.
on him. I'm just like, well, it's just the updated touring bike.
Yeah. Yes.
If you look,
It's got fatter tires.
not even that much fatter, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a marketing term.
Oh, for sure.
And granted, they've tweaked the geometry a little bit, and they've done a few things. So if you want to get people, if you want to get into an argument with someone really hardcore about gravel bikes versus touring bikes, blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
But for
They have strong opinions.
yeah, and for me, it's like, well, just go to the Cannondale website and see is there a touring bike on there? No. Is there gravel bikes? A whole category
Yep.
of them. And can you put a rack on those bikes? Oh yeah, they're set up for racks
Absolutely.
in the front and the rear.
Well, you can get more granular. I've seen hot takes and hot arguments getting down to the differences between gravel racing bikes and cyclocross bikes.
Mhm.
And I remember when the Crux came out,
Mm-hmm.
some people I actually know did some reviews, and I just remember these like long threads on Twitter, people getting really angry.
Oh yeah.
And some of it had to do with the marketing because a lot of it is marketing driven. It's
It
like
i-
you need this new bike.
Yeah.
You might have an all roads bike. You might
Uh-huh.
have a road bike. You
Yep.
might have a mountain bike. You might have a cyclocross bike. You might have a touring bike. But you know what you don't have in your quiver? A gravel bike.
Screw the bike industry, Danny.
Screw it.
See, that's the bike industry.
And all you literally need is a bike.
a bike. A
Now, I can see some specialists
uh-huh.
wanting no problem there, fair play. But like in general, a guy like me, there was this race.
I mean, are there
I think it was
you know,
I think it was called Barry Roubaix, but
yeah.
quick story, this pro, I forgot his name, a good American pro, I forgot his name. He did this race, and it was billed as a gravel race. I think it was in Michigan. I want to say Barry Roubaix, but
Mhm.
I could be thinking of another race. Point being, it was built as a gravel race. It's got all the marking around it, all
Yeah.
the like cool posters and the fat tires and all this kind of stuff. He rode it on his road racing bike because he didn't have a gravel bike.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even change the tires. I think he was riding on 25 mil road bike, and he like almost won or was top 10 or something. Like he did as well as he probably. I mean, in his words, he did as well on that same bike as the other guys. He didn't need it. He said maybe one or two sections
Mm-hmm.
he maybe could have benefited from like a fatter, lower pressure tire,
Mm-hmm.
but like, and in some ways that he actually fared better on the road bike because he was like faster than some of the guys on these like quote unquote slower bikes. But anyway, it is marketing BS.
Yeah, that is that is the bike. That's the, I think, in my opinion, that's the bike industry screwing over the consumer big time because it just, there's always going to be those people that need the newest, latest, greatest thing. But can you achieve most of that, 90% of that, 95, 98% of that on a cyclocross bike? Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
In fact, cyclocross bikes were what people were riding on gravel before there were gravel bikes, right?
At some point, people were just riding a bike for everything.
You could put together a Trek 520, so an old
Yes.
steel touring
Beautiful.
Trek 520.
You see them all over the city.
Yeah, you could put 38C tires on that. It's got cantilever brakes and put a drop bar on there. I could probably ride gravel right alongside you on a bike like. I'm sure. In fact, I could ride that. Right?
You totally could. You know what I just realized, Joe?
Mm.
We're those two cranky guys. We're jaded.
No,
We're retro grouches.
You know what? I'm far from jaded. I'm far from cranky.
I kid.
You know what?
We're giving an honest assessment.
No, I'm not. I'm not. What I'm trying to communicate is that you don't need a $2,000 latest gravel bike to ride gravel.
Well, I mean, 2,000 looks cheap. I think some of those like 3, 4, 5,000.
I have them.
Some of them don't even have electronic. I can't believe they're getting away selling $5,000 road bikes and they don't even have electronic.
Oh no, man! You know what? They are the new buzzword that I've heard out there: acoustical.
Oh right,
They're
I love this. Tell the folks what that's about.
An acoustic bike is a bike that has cables on it. Cable actuated brakes, cable actuated
rim brakes.
Yeah, not necessarily. They don't have to be rim brakes.
Oh, they can be like the mechanical versus hydraulic.
Mechanical
Gotcha.
disc.
Gotcha.
Versus hydraulic.
Right.
And electric versus
acoustic,
cable. Acoustic. I ride acoustic. I was like,
I kind of love it.
Mhm.
But to go back full circle, I guess I can see, of course. Now I did try to ride my cross bike in Payless, and I got around fine on certain trails, no problem. Actually, was having a ton of fun. But clearly, there were a few sections that were.
They're mountain bike trails.
I would want to be on a mountain bike. So, we're not dumb. We're not saying that there isn't a purpose for like a mountain bike and some of these others, but these blurring lines of this other kind of riding, it drives me a little bit nuts.
Well, and then, you're kind of, you're separating people versus uniting people.
Yep.
You're just kind of, it's like
segregation in a sense.
Yeah. What's the difference between a road rider and all my life I've been trying to blur those lines. I'm a mountain biker. I'm a roadie. As a bike shop owner, I have to be Switzerland. I have to be kind of like, I can't really take one side or the other. I have my preference just because of the way that I came up in bikes and my personal preference, right? I ride road. I like riding road bikes. I ride mountain bike for fun, off-season training for me, but that doesn't mean I don't ride mountain bikes. It's not that, on a Thursday with my friends, I don't get on a mountain bike, but there's this, the bike industry kind of pushes you in certain directions, and the clothes that you wear and the helmet you wear, and it's like, man, why do you really want to do that? Is that something you should be doing?
Yeah. I know we talked previously about Taylor Finney, someone I really like. And I'm just mentioning him now because he's kind of interesting. If you look at his Instagram, like he's just having fun. And, he was a pro, he has access, and obviously I would guess the money and the connections to get whatever he wants. He could ride anything he wants on planet Earth,
sure,
so to speak. And he's just riding just these fun bikes, almost like the clunkers.
Yeah.
He's just kind of thrown on some big fat tires on these bikes, and he's got, I don't know what they're called. What do you call the bars that are just like... Swoopy, yeah, like wide handles, and... He's just having fun.
Riser
and the guy, was fourth in Paris-Roubaix. He's ridden the Tour de France. Like, it's just he's having a blast. He's wearing jorts,
Mm-hmm.
he's wearing sneakers,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just having so much fun. And some of his rides aren't just like little cruises around Boulder or wherever he lives. I believe he's in the Boulder area. I mean, some of the rides are like long and challenging rides. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like he's just being a tool riding around downtown on some like weird bike. He's actually going on like legit rides. But it just to me it just screams like, oh man, like you don't need to be dolled
No.
up. You don't have to have the $500 bib shorts. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to have the um, route or the ride appropriate bike, specific bike, like the gravel racer. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I digress. But
Yeah, you don't have to have any of that stuff to be a part of the sport.
he's having a blast.
Yeah. In fact, sometimes you can have more fun on something like that than some of the really fancy stuff. Some simpler in a lot of cases is better. We've just overcomplicated things, the for people and made it confusing, you know.
hmm Now,
Um,
we've been talking at length about this because that's what we do on the Bike Shop Society podcast. But what does it mean for you as a bike shop owner? And what do you kind of like tell people? Because obviously you can't just like unpack a whole thing with a little customer interaction. But like, do people kind of come in and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a bike, but I'm not really sure what I want"? Like, would you get that?
that's the beauty of a small bike shop, and that's why I think, that's why I think the independent bike shop, the small bike shop, the owner, the bike shop where the owner's there, the hands-on owner, and still meeting people and talking to customers. I think there will always be a place for us, because those customers are out there. There there's an opportunity to work with those people.
Mm-hmm.
What? Oh well, I need a bike. Well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to ride? Usually, if someone's coming into your shop, it's because they want to ride locally. They want to ride the local trails or wherever you're located. It's not that they're going to they're planning to go ride the bike in Colorado. They want a bike and in some cases you have to you have to lead them a little bit. Well, what do you want to do with the bike? In some cases, they don't know what they want. They want to ride. They just want to ride a bike. Well, we have these trails across the street. This is the kind of bike that you need. Um, so yeah, you ask them some questions.
Mm-hmm.
You size them up a little bit. If
Mm-hmm.
if it's a 60-year-old lady, you're not going to put her on a road bike or a sport
Or a
hybrid bike,
gravel
right?
specific racing bike.
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. It's like, okay, you're
Turns out she's the U.S. national gravel champ in
well,
her age category.
and you can tell that person too coming in. I mean, if she's 60 and she's the gravel national champion, you're gonna know.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna know. But you should know if you've been
Mm-hmm.
around for a little bit, and with a little bit of experience, you'll also know that that could be your friend's grandmother,
Yep.
and she's just looking for a comfort hybrid bike that's easy to get on and off with a big saddle and upright handlebars
Gel saddle.
and yeah, maybe not even a gel saddle, just a good position on the bike.
Yep.
Comfortable on the bike, less gears.
Mm-hmm.
Bike companies, man, they're still loading up a basic hybrid bike with 27 gears.
Which is something you really need in Illinois.
Well, it's not only the terrain for our terrain, because that same bike is being sold in Colorado. So maybe you do need, maybe you do need 27 gears on Colorado. The problem is that on an entry level bike or a, kind of something that's geared towards the
No pun intended.
casual cyclist,
Pandemic.
you don't. They're the ones that are most need of a one by.
Yes.
Not
Just give him a belt drive.
Yeah, they're the ones that need a one by.
Yep.
They need one shifter on the right side, and then that's it. And
I don't mean this in a condescending way,
Mhm.
but it never ceases to amaze me how a lot of people don't really understand gears
most people
and
don't
gearing.
understand gears.
And I say that
Hmm.
like not in a douchey way. It's just we don't even think about it, of course, but the three rings in front, if they have a triple, or all the gears in the
Mhm.
back, they don't kind of know what's going on with the different. If they have like
It's
a grip
scary.
shift type shifter or something else. Obviously now we have integrated shifting for road and whatnot, but
It's
I
intimidating to
bikes
most
there's
people.
it's too much bike for a lot of people. You don't need that.
Yeah, but that is stock on an entry level on the cheapest hybrid bike.
Why don't they just sell?
It's going to be 3 rings in the front and 7 in the rear. That's 21
Why don't they
speeds.
just sell like a double or a single and then have like
A one by.
right, which is funny enough where SRAM is going now
Yeah.
with its very successful.
On the high end though,
Yeah.
not at the entry level.
Why not just have and it's easier to maintain.
Yeah.
People usually have you hear bikes all over
Well,
everywhere.
Schwinn figured it out a long
They
time
make
ago.
their chains are rubbing.
Mm-hmm.
Their gears
Yeah.
aren't adjusted right, and I don't understand it. It seems like the opposite.
And they don't. Off the bat, you don't know how to shift, so they're not shifting properly. And then they drop the chain, and then
Or they shift without pedaling.
Yeah, the
Or
chain.
they shift like in the middle of a hard climb, and
The chain gets stuck, and
There's
then they don't ride a bike again because now they're stuck on the
that's
path.
what I mean. Now they're on. It's a product that makes them angry,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're pissed. It's so weird. I don't know.
And I don't know. We have to get somebody in to explain all these things because these are questions that I've had, and and I do have friends that I can talk to about this at length about why this isn't done. They work at component manufacturers and places like that, and I'm sure there's some sort of an answer. But my thought is is that there's just nobody putting on the brakes at these bike companies.
Literally.
There's nobody there there's nobody saying no, this
Right.
is a stupid idea. The companies that are where there is somebody who says this is a stupid
The
idea.
smaller places.
Yeah, they have 6 bikes.
Yep.
They sell 6 bikes. They
Like
sell
Surly or State
Yeah.
bicycles or
Mhm.
something like that.
yeah, even salsa.
Keep it real.
Yeah,
Salsa.
yeah. I mean, they have a really
Mm-hmm.
this is what we do. We don't get out of our lane too much.
Yep.
We do it really well. We don't make super cheap
And we
stuff.
just crush it.
And we just kill it. And we make this many bikes. It's kind of like a bakery. This is what we make, and when we're done,
Yep.
we're closed,
all gone.
and we're gonna make more next. You better hurry up because that. And I think that's the model that the bike industry should move towards.
I think one of the cool things that you taught me when I was at Cycle Smithy, because I was kind of new to the game,
Uh-huh.
and I think I don't know if you told it to me directly or I just learned from watching you because you sold bikes like you could sell anything, and you were so good with selling bikes. But it was always like the same idea. Like the first and only real important question is, what kind of riding are you going to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple and it's so it's a fantastic place to start
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes I hear people come in like, yeah, I'm looking to spend in this price range, which can be helpful, but it's not really the great way to look at buying a bike.
Mm-hmm.
Or I definitely want aluminum, or I definitely want XYZ.
And why do you want aluminum? Would be my question. It's like, why do you want an aluminum bike?
Have you ridden steel? Have you ridden carbon
Mhm.
fiber? Maybe aluminum is the right. Maybe you have that experience, but I love starting from
Mm-hmm.
where are you going to be riding
Yeah.
and just stop and think about it. So it's cool to be aspirational and be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I really want to like do some long rides and I want to go, to DeKalb and back or
Mhm.
whatever you're going to do. I want to go to the Wisconsin state line but realistically, are you going to take 25 rides on the lakefront path per year in the summer and that's it? That's fine.
Yeah. And by the way, so
You don't need a gravel bike for that.
this podcast is here for if you're listening to this and you're kind of thinking about these things, or if you have questions about bicycles, feel free to hit us up. I'd be happy to answer your bicycle questions.
Where can they find us?
At bikeshopsociety.com. We're also Instagram, mobile. We are Twitterable. We are. I think email is probably the best way to hit us. Go to the website, or you can. It's mail@bikeshopsociety.com. Send us an email. It'd be nice to.
Yeah, or just reach
to
out
get
and say
something.
hey, or
Mm-hmm.
disagree, agree, whatever. Reach out and say hi, and they can also obviously find us very easily in the podcasts, whatever platform they're listening to.
Yeah.
in the notes or whatever they call that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there are links there to our website and all the rest. But yeah, we I try to answer any questions that I can, and if not, we have access to. We know a lot of people. We know
Mhm.
people at the bike companies, and
Yep.
we know people at the manufacturers, and we can maybe call or get some of those people on the air to answer some of our questions. That this is kind of the reason why we put this together because I have some questions myself about how things are done. I've been
I
in,
have so many questions.
yeah, I've
The
been
day
in,
you stop having questions, something's wrong.
yeah, I've been busy working at a bike shop. I don't have time to be like digging around and getting some of these answers,
Right.
like why and
Hmm.
how, Um, there are some things that I know,
I think from
obviously,
this
but
conversation, I have like 100 new questions I didn't
mhm,
even realize I had. And we don't have to answer it now. But
mhm.
one of them, for example, when you talked about what happens like if you're a shop and you want to sell Specialized or Trek or Cannondale or whatever it is, what does that what does that entail? Like what are their demands? What's in the contract, so to speak? Like I don't even know what I never thought about that. Like do they make you carry a certain number of bikes? Like how
Mhm.
does that all work? I'm just kind of curious and I thought something that would be interesting, sounds like for another time, but
Yeah, I mean,
those are the types of things I was like thinking in my mind as you were just talking about it. I was like, I never thought about that. Like what does it mean to be a Specialized dealer?
it used to be much friendlier. So when I broke into the bike business, it was a friendly business. It was a very friendly business. It was ma and pa. It was the bike industry was much more of an industry in the sense that we all kind of knew why we were in the business. You know, it was it was a bike business. Nobody was looking to get super
It was a
rich in
little
the
more warm
business.
and fuzzy. Good
Yeah,
feels.
yeah. And in the mid to late '90s, I knew the turning point. I knew it, and I because I was I was there right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I worked at we were a Specialized dealer, and Specialized, um, they came into their big dealers and offered us a flight. They told us that they had a lot of some big news,
A
and they were
junket? They're going to send you somewhere and pay for it all?
yes, and they flew us all out to California. They
Mm.
flew us out to San Jose, California.
Mm-hmm. Near
Eh,
Silicon Valley.
yes, and they put us up in a hotel, and then they wined us and dined us. They took us to whatever the pier is there in San Francisco, um, lovely pier that they had rented and set up all their.
Mm.
They'd set up a bike there. They set up their
Yeah,
whole little show, their presentation there.
right.
And they even took us out to they even took us out
Morgan
to
Hill is their HQ
their
now. I don't know what
headquarters.
it was back then.
It still
Is
is. It still is. But they set up, I guess, close. Morgan Hill must be
yeah.
close to San Jose, or
Yeah, yeah,
it was
yeah.
the biggest city, and
Been out there a couple
they
times.
could fly people in there.
It's beautiful out there.
But they took us to Alcatraz. They even took us on
Oh,
a tour of Alcatraz. I
fun.
mean, they really,
They're selling it.
they were really
They
doing us
want you
up.
on board.
Yeah, and then they broke the news that, oh, we're changing the way that we do business.
Oh,
It's like,
okay.
oh yeah, we want you to buy these bikes, and you're going to be. Now I forgot all the details of it
Yeah.
all, but
Became more businessy and
oh yeah, I mean, and then they took you into the back room to write that big ass order for the season. It's like, here you go, and how many bikes are you going to buy? That kind of thing. That it had that feel to it,
right,
and I was not authorized to place that kind of a deal. My
of course.
my boss sent me because he didn't want to go. It was a
Yeah.
free trip.
Yep.
So, I went, and but that was I even I was in my 20s probably when that I was in my 20s when that happened. Still relatively young bike shop.
Were you like, I'm having fun. I don't want to talk shop. I don't want to talk
Yeah, I'm like,
orders.
well, even I knew it, like I shouldn't be placing, $250,000 orders or
Right.
whatever it was, or
'Cause then
making
you have the shipment come and you're
yeah,
like, what do I do now?
yeah, making commitments for that kind of stuff. There was no way, I wasn't authorized to
I
do
mean,
that.
one bad move like that could put a shop out of business.
Yeah, but they were, you could see that there was some people that they wanted you to start picking a side.
Mm-hmm.
And those were, and at that time, I think we still sold Trek I think we had Trek and Specialized on the floor. And so things, that's when the industry started going one way or the other.
Here's a really basic
Mhm.
question. I literally don't know the answer. Are you allowed to have both Specialized and Trek in your shop?
I think if I don't know that anyone makes you pick, but I think most shops right now, if you're a Specialized dealer for most medium to smaller shops, you don't really have the resources to have carry the two brands.
Right.
You have to buy so much of
That's a good point.
one brand.
But in theory, could you have both?
I think there are still shops. There are still some big shops in
Okay.
this country
I'm
that
trying to think if I've seen it.
multiple store. Although probably less, but I mean
Mm.
until the last few years or before the pandemic, yeah, I think there were still a couple of really big chains that had both sitting in their shops.
I know that they both have pretty amazing bikes. I would say anyway, but I feel like Trek has a lot more like variety for the types of bikes. I feel like Specialized is still. I know they have a variety of bikes too, but I feel like they don't have as wide a range, and I feel like they're still more performance oriented, somewhat more than Trek.
I think they always have been.
Yeah.
I mean, they've always kind of separated themselves by their
I
technology.
still think of like
and-
racing when I think of Specialized.
Yep.
Like that's a, and Trek makes obviously amazing performance bikes, no doubt. Some of the highest end you can get,
but their family and casual.
yeah, I
stuff
think
and-
more of like even like e-bikes. Like I
Mhm.
know Specialized has an e-bike, but I
Yep.
think more like Trek when I think of some of the e-bikes and the gravel bikes and the hybrids almost.
Yeah, like I don't, and we should get my friend in to give us a little bit more insight in
I
that.
feel like that's gonna be like a three-parter. There's so much to
Yeah.
know and talk about.
I have my ideas about what's going on there. I mean, I just have right now. Honestly, I don't think there's been a better time to sell a bike company. Right.
Oh,
I think I think there's a lot of orders on the books. Now,
mm.
there's a
Now,
lot
when
of
you mean bike company, not bike shop?
even
or-
bike. I think maybe some bike shops have been sold too right now because the books are looking good and they're clean and they've made a lot of money maybe in the
So
last year.
do you mean? So I understand you mean like hypothetically. Let's say I mean I know Surly's pretty big, but like even like Surly, like if Trek made an offer and wanted to buy them out, is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
No,
Or
no,
something
I'm
different?
talking more like if I'm Trek and I wanted to sell to investor group or something. If
Oh, gotcha.
I was
gotcha.
if I was the
Some
fam-
private equity or
if
something.
I was the
Yeah.
family that owned Trek and I was fed up with bikes, and I just want to go into politics or buy a yacht or
You mean like the Waltons from Walmart can come by and be like, hey,
hmm
because they bought Rafa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like somebody who I probably see it more as like someone who doesn't really know the bike business, but
Right.
thinks the bike business is a great thing to
Yes.
be in, and just goes off what the numbers in the books say.
Yeah,
Right
and
now-
then they buy it, and they have an activist investor, and he's got some ideas. The next thing you know, they liquidate it.
Well, I think that right now the bike, I think bike companies probably look really good on paper right now. But if you're talking to an insider, I
Right.
mean, if you're talking to somebody in the industry, and
Right.
to take a look at some of that stuff, I bet that my guess would be right now that there are way, 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 way too many bikes on order right now. Like,
I was gonna say, well, that's a whole other thing I want to talk about.
Yeah, I think-
Obviously, a lot of these companies are private, so we don't know their books. But
Mhm.
I think and you probably know more about this than I do, but I think it's gonna be fascinating. Like right now, I still search a lot of the sites
Mhm.
because I'm in the market for a bike.
Yeah.
And there's nothing available or almost nothing. It's starting to
Mhm.
trickle in, but like really trickle in.
hmm
But I feel like too. Do you feel like there's gonna be like this deluge, this like
Oh.
tsunami of bikes?
I know bike shops that have like 1,000 bikes on order, and they sell like 300 a year.
Oh,
You know what I mean? And they have 1,000 on back order. And some of these bike companies now are saying, okay, no cancels on your orders. That's what you got on order.
to the bike shops.
Yeah,
So if you're like I
Yeah.
see.
So
So if
they're-
you're gonna order like I don't know 40
if
specialized,
you're gonna
road
order.
bikes or
You're gonna
something.
have or whatever brand. 'Cause
right,
I don't know-
whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know that Specialized is doing that necessarily. I don't know what the
Hypothetically,
Yeah, I don't know what the particulars are with every brand, and I think it's different depending on the bike shop you are and what you're doing. But I just know I know that there are places just have way too much. They are anticipating this boom just going forever. For another 2 years.
right.
But at some point it's going to be satiated. Like
Mhm.
the need for new bikes. Is just not going to. Everybody will get their new bike.
I hope that and maybe I'm just being just overly optimistic, but I hope that something you said there made me think about this. I hope that even talking about the industry stuff, I hope that going forward, what comes out of this pandemic is we don't necessarily, because of the work from home aspect, we don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need our cars as much,
Mm-hmm.
and we can actually walk more and bike more and use more mass transit. I know that sounds a little rose rosy, but I hope something like that comes from that.
Yeah, I think in the I think I certainly in big cities, I mean,
But
we have
hopefully,
we have.
smaller towns and areas. I know there are always going to be places that are kind of quote unquote
Mm-hmm.
car dependent.
Yep.
Hopefully, those become EVs
Mm-hmm.
and not combustion. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being romantic. But I hope that coming out of this, people are just biking more
I
and
people are
walking more.
people have rediscovered the outdoors. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a positive. Like
Yep.
in the last with the pandemic, people got outside again. People took a walk again. People rode a bike for the first time since they were little kids.
Mm-hmm.
And a certain percentage of those people will stick with the sport. And my hope is that, I mean, if we were able to keep 10 to 15% of the new riders, you know,
That'd be huge.
that's a shot in the arm. It's a
Yep.
shot in the arm. And then the other thing that we learned is that, um, we need the bike, that there's enough business to go around for most bike shops. There's business out there for bike shops, so much so that you might even be able to specialize in a certain type of business.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can get away from doing kids bikes and you can focus more on the high end. And the guy who likes to do a lot of kids bikes, he can take the kids bikes and not deal with those high end bikes that
Newfangled carbon contraptions.
yeah, they don't have the sort of they don't have the technicians, the mechanics to work on that kind of stuff,
Right.
and they don't want to waste their time with it
Internal
because
cable routing.
it's a pain in the
Blasted.
ass. It is and that stuff is a pain in the ass.
It
If you don't-
is.
and especially if you don't do it all the time, you don't have the equipment.
It's time consuming.
It's
You're going to lose your mechanic for a few hours easy.
easy, and that's someone who knows what they're
Right.
what they're
It's
doing.
still, yeah.
And if you have a kid back there who's used to working on kids bikes and old Schwinns,
Flats and
yeah, and you give him one of these things, not only is he like not going to be able
Yeah.
to fix it or take forever to
Mhm.
fix it, he might break it.
Yep.
And now it's going to cost you $500 to fix that customer's bike, and a bad Yelp review and all the rest that comes along
oh
with
my
it.
god.
So those guys are happy to give that crap up. They rather give me a cheap tune-up, give me a tune-up on a Trek 820 all day long. I will do 1,000 of
Long
those.
live the 820.
Yeah, I rather do those, and you take the high-end stuff. And that part of that is happening now in the bike industry. I mean, I think there's, you're kind of, like I said, you had to pick your lane and stay in your lane, because you had to do what was essential, and so you had to stick to the stuff you're really, you get to learn what you're really good at, what you're happy doing, what you're not happy doing, and
I'll finish on this little note
mm-hmm,
to wind it back. My kind of takeaway is the shops that I go to
mm-hmm,
as like a civilian,
yep,
um, I feel comfortable, I feel welcome,
mm-hmm,
and there's expertise,
mm-hmm,
and no one's trying to BS me. It's kind of interesting knowing, and I'm not blowing my horn, but it's kind of interesting to know bikes in the industry and to go in and you play a little bit dumb
mm-hmm,
and to see if they try to like not rip you off, but try to like upsell you, or it's kind of interesting having that knowledge. And it would be if you were in any other walk of life, like
yeah,
buying a car or a home. Like let's say, like my friend's a home inspector. Like if he goes into a place, he could tell right away,
yeah,
like what's going on with the foundation or this or that.
yeah,
Um, but it's like I'll go back to shops if cool atmosphere
mm-hmm,
and expertise. They know, and it's not that they have to be able to fix every single thing,
mm-hmm,
but they're able to say, you know what, here's the deal with this, and here's the solution we have. Like just be transparent and open. I'll go back to those shops all day. So cool vibes and real expertise.
yeah. Being on the other side of that, being the guy who's receiving the guy like you coming into the shop, I think we've been dealing with that for a long time, ever since the internet age, and blogs and forums and
Chat rooms.
yeah, and information being out there much
Mhm.
more than it used to be. And so we've been dealing with that for a long time. And I think anybody who claims to be an expert and know everything is ridiculous. The minute you walk into a place and they like, supposedly know everything about everything, you probably want to walk out because most of my days I'll say I don't know, but what I do know is how to get an answer.
Yep.
I can get you an answer. I can figure it out. It's
Yep.
not a problem. Hold on a second. Let me go to the website. Let me figure out. Let me see what the geometry is on that bike, and let me see what the geometry is on that bike. I ride this, and I want to get this bike. Do you think it's going to fit? Well, I don't know, but let me pull up some charts up.
Absolutely.
Let me
Just
take a look.
Just be honest.
Yeah, let me compare. I mean, it's not, show them, and yeah, and then give them my professional opinion.
Yep.
Because I can tell you what I think. I can tell you which one's better. I just need the facts. And these days, I don't pretend like I know everything.
Right.
Because-
And that's good, because I think the people who do lose out long term, because
Mhm.
you'll be people will see you eventually, so to speak. They'll know what's up.
And there's still a lot of shops that do business that way. Oh, that sucks.
Because I think it's ego.
Uh-huh.
And I
Oh,
think,
a lot.
and I think they also come from, let's call it old school mentality, where it's like you have to know everything, and if you don't, fake it. But
Yeah.
fake it till you make it doesn't really work in this context. Like
Or-
because people could just go online and probably find the answer anyway,
Yeah,
depending on what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think part of it's like ego, and like you always have to like the fear of saying I don't know. Like once you embrace that, it's like really enlightening. It's like
Oh.
I don't know, but you know what? I know where to look
Yeah, and I know who to ask.
or who to ask.
I can call the guy,
Right.
and I know who to call, and it's the guy who designed it. It's a cool thing is that you can actually get a really good answer, and sometimes in some cases too much of an answer. It's yeah, I think especially with the younger people that we're dealing with, it's all out in the open now.
Mm-hmm.
It's DIY. They're a DIY generation. They have grown up with learning how to do it.
Crowdsourcing and
Yeah, all of that stuff. And so to try and BS your way with some of them is ridiculous. And we also have like the guy who came in today, riding for a long time, out of it. He didn't need to know about bikes because he had a bike for the last 30 years that he's ridden.
yes,
But now he's looking to
yeah,
update something, and now he's gone back and he's thoroughly confused because, like you said, there's a million clothing brands now. There used to be Hind
mm-hmm.
and Descent.
Yep. Oh God, I remember those OGs.
Yeah, there was Asos, on the
Yes.
high end,
Yes,
and there was
which is still high end.
maybe Louis Garneau.
Oh man,
All right, and
going all retro.
Pearl Izumi.
Pearl Izumi.
So you had Pearl Izumi, and now, like you said, it's like, what are all of these brands?
I don't even know that.
Helmets. There used to be Bell and Giro, and now
It's unbelievable.
yeah. So he's coming into this new landscape, and it's a completely different language for him, and you have to find somebody who can break it down for him.
Did
And,
you sell him a bike?
I had two options for him. Actually, I fit him. I sized him. So I sized him. So I figured I determined what size he needed
Mhm.
because he had been riding a 58. He had been riding a 58 for a long time. It turns out he needs a 56.
That's a big difference.
It is. It's a size. If you're going through the trouble of buying a $2,000 or $3,000 bike, any nice bike, any bike, really,
Mhm.
any bike. And this is for people who maybe aren't used to buying bikes, or even a seasoned guy like him who's been riding for 30 years. He's been riding the wrong size bike.
Mm.
Make sure you're getting sized properly, and
It is
not,
so worth it.
yeah, and not just and by sized, I'm not talking about fitting because that's two different things.
Mhm.
Just size, like not walking into a bike shop and someone having you throw a leg over a bike and then you lifting the bike or
Yeah.
making sure that it clears your crotch.
Yeah.
But just sized.
Yep.
Some sort of a sizing, some sort of a sizing system.
It's like a fitting light.
Yeah, it's just
'Cause we're not getting down to like the most efficient, aerodynamic, powerful, et cetera, et cetera. We're just trying to make sure that you're on the right size bike for you.
the right size frame.
The
that you're-
reach,
yeah, uh-huh.
the frame, because
Well, that's fitting.
well, okay.
So size.
See, I can't just be that little.
Yes.
I gotta go
So
full on.
bike sizing is just the size, right? 58, 50. Am I a 58? Am I a 56? Am I a 52? Am I 61?
So
So
you're
that's
just saying on that basic level.
the most
Oh,
basic of
wow.
levels. Because I mean, I think especially if you're dealing with a younger salesperson,
Mm,
and they're just eyeballing
just
you.
greener. They don't know. Like,
They don't know. They're not taking certain things into account, like your torso length, and they're looking at your long legs, so you can size
oh yeah, you must be a 62 or whatever.
and technically technically you can fit on that 62
Right.
because your legs are really long, but maybe your torso is really short.
Yes.
And so maybe going down to a 60
Yep.
with a shorter top tube because your torso is really
I don't know.
short.
I think you're flirting with fitting there again.
But that's
It's a fine line.
no, but that's the frame.
Okay.
So, that's why you're sizing that frame. It's like it's determining that frame size. Then you go into fit.
Okay.
Then you go into shortening the stem
like-
and then
yeah.
the handlebars and the seat height and all the rest. But the just
Crank arms. Yeah.
yeah, just sizing the bike, just the frames.
Right.
Am I a small, a medium, or a large? Am I, and depending on and it's just simple math. It's the configuration of your body, right? It's just your torso length,
Yep.
your arm length, your.
And it affects so many things that I didn't realize like early on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just like, can you fit on the bike? Can you
Mhm.
put a foot down at the stop sign? It's about so much more. It's about how you the weight, whether you have too much weight toward the front or toward the back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it, which affects handling,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're getting into like a little more adventurous kind of stuff and you're riding climbs and descents and stuff like.
Well, and those bikes were designed, when they put it into that CAD program and they were designing that bike, it's designed so that your weight is distributed a certain way on that bike in order for that bike to work
Right, that's what
properly.
I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and that goes back to me talking about the how the bike industry sells these really high-end racing bikes, these aero racing bikes, to people who shouldn't be riding. They know full well
Yeah.
that some of these people should not be riding those
And
bikes.
to be fair, some folks really want to have those bikes
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah, and so you sell it to them. You put a big upright stem on there, and it's just like, yeah, and it's wrong.
It looks ridiculous when they have this crazy slope
Yeah.
stem, like,
Yeah, because it's the only way that they can sit on the bike and breathe. Because
and
there's
and then they have like I don't know, a giant saddlebag with like all kinds, 5 pounds of
Mhm.
whatever, and then they're paying this money for this like 16-pound bike. But getting back to the sizing thing, which I thought was interesting,
yeah,
real quick.
sizing versus fitting.
Yes. So do you think though that some shops maybe are guilty of selling they want to get rid of what's on the floor, and so they will put someone on a 58, even though they know they should probably be on a 56 because they might lose the sale?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I know that.
I know that sounds kind of like a naive question, but do you
No.
think people do that like
Yeah,
on the regular?
yeah, I think it's pretty common.
Okay.
I think it's pretty common in bike shops. That's why I said get sized, because
Yeah.
once you get sized, and and if the shop that
I couldn't sleep at night if I sold someone the wrong size bike intentionally.
yeah, me neither. I mean, it's not something that's ideal, and you can make a mistake and size and
Sure,
sell
sure.
someone the wrong bike.
Sometimes
so
it's a fine line depending on person's like torso and leg,
Mhm.
inseam, etc.
But I would go and determine your size, because your size isn't going to change. Your size is going to be it might. I take that back, because your size could be different from brand to brand depending on the configuration of the bike. So in some cases, you might be able to ride that 61 if that top tube is really short, like what they used to call women's geometry, which is what they used to do with those women geometry bikes was really just short top tube bikes, right? They were adjusting for the typical woman, not even typical woman. They were just assuming that a woman had longer legs and shorter torso.
Oh
But
God.
there's plenty of men like that.
And it's what's funny too on that note is I know that some brands now are discontinuing their women specific design,
Mm-hmm.
which is an interesting to talk about too. Real quick though, I have this interesting experience with Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a brand I like. I think they make good bikes. They're kind of known for their value.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty high end performing bikes, but not as expensive as maybe a Specialized or Trek, depending on what we're talking about. But what happened was I had a bike sent to me that I was going to ride as like a test review. I ended up not riding it at all. I sent it back because I quit the job I was in, for which I was going to do this review. But it was a cross bike, and I told them I'm a 58, and I didn't realize at the time that Canyon they have their own kind of algorithm for like sizing you.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say fitting you, but now I know it say size.
Uh-huh.
I'm learning, Joe.
Yeah, sizing and fitting it, and
And
it's
I told them a 58,
Uh-huh.
and so they sent me a large, and it was a cyclocross bike. And the
Uh-huh.
bike came, and I pulled out of the box, and I put the front wheel on. And I said, "Oh my God, this bike's too big for me." And again, 58s generally are fine for me. So I think the guy I was working with said, "Oh, you're probably a large," and that was a fair guess. But turns out, especially for cross bikes, because they're a little bit taller, higher bottom bracket. But this bike, I was my crotch was on the top tube. It was just too big a bike, and that extended to everything else, of course,
Yep.
proportion wise. And then so I had to send it back anyway because I was leaving that position, so I wasn't going to be reviewing it. So it was going back anyway, but I would have had to return it and get a smaller size. Fast forward, I just bought that Endurace, which is like their endurance bike, and I went with their algorithm, and I was thinking, you know what? Based on my experience with the cyclocross bike, maybe I should hedge and go a little bit smaller. And so the bike they sent me, it does fit. And I'm probably with this specific model, I'm probably okay because you know how you can go a little bit smaller if you want.
It's better to err to the smaller size than to the bigger size. It's
Absolutely.
It's easier to make a smaller bike bigger
Yep.
than it is to make a big bike smaller.
Yeah, because you can get a slightly, longer stem, and what
C-posts.
have you, C-post, maybe even the crank arms.
Yep.
Long story short, I'm sending it back because I want a different bike. But when because I want electronic, I realize this is for another conversation, but I realize I don't want the mechanical. I just can't go back to mechanical shifting. I don't want to sound snobby, but once you're on electronic for so long, going back to mechanical, it's not very nice. And so I'm going to send the bike back for that reason, but I'm actually going to go up. I went into their little algorithm again, and they're saying I should have a large for the road. So I'm gonna do that on the next one with the mechanical. But my point is it depends on the brand too. And again, the cyclocross bike, it is a different geometry because of the nature of the sport. You're whipping it on your shoulder. They have higher bottom brackets to clear logs and all this kind of stuff.
Especially small, brands that are size small, medium, and large. It's really important.
I don't like that.
That's really vague in the especially in the road bike world. It's kind of
it's weird.
I
will say though, just to be clear, Canyon, I like once I fully understood it, and it's not rocket science, but they have you put in. I don't know if you saw it, but they have you put in on the site your height and your inseam. And I think they actually is it Specialized? I think Specialized actually does one where they have you sit down and they have you measure from the ground to your knee.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Canyon does have a nice kind of little algorithm, a little feature on their site, and so it spit out what I think is going to be the right size. But getting back to your point, I remember when I first saw whatever brand it was that was oh, I want a 50. Well, we have small, medium, large, and extra large. And I was like, what? I don't know what that is. How does that work? I don't love that. I do like having the centimeter size.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that if any company is dialed in with that, considering how many bikes they do online, I bet theirs is probably a pretty decent system. I'm sure they have it figured out more than anybody.
Yes, because otherwise they're going to have so much
some returns. Yeah, so I mean, I bet they've put a lot of money and thought into that.
Yep.
So
and they're German. Come on.
Yeah, maybe too much thought about that, but and I'm not there's a portion of the bike industry is really afraid of these online places. I kind of embrace it because I think people are used to buying stuff like that now, and it's silly. I don't really see them as competition. They're not my competition, So I mean, those guys are.
You'd mentioned that before. You actually said that you were encouraged and you were kind of excited for it.
I was super excited,
which I thought was an interesting response. That would have been my first guess, but now knowing how innovative and forward-thinking you are, Joe.
Oh,
it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just not that's not my business. I'm not competing against a billion, multi-million-dollar corporations.
Yeah, Trek is actually $1 billion company.
Yeah, they're not my. Those aren't my. That's not my competition.
Yeah.
That's not my competition. That's
don't go online and look at Trek. I got a bike here for you.
Yeah, Amazon. I'm fighting Amazon for bike business.
Yeah.
Come on, and eBay and all the rest. That's not my. That's not my thing. Somewhere those people all need a place to get their bike fixed.
Well,
so
we have unpacked a lot. I think this has been good. it's actually left me. I think this is a good thing. It's
No, you know what,
it's
Danny?
left me with more questions than answers, which is good.
We talked all. It was all about bikes, Danny.
Bikes.
We didn't talk about movies or anything fun.
I didn't tell you about my poll on Twitter.
You had a poll. You
I
ran
put
a
a poll up last night.
about
Well,
your favorite kind of beer.
we can
IPA
end
or
on
a-
this. It's funny you said that because they were talking about that on the Smartless podcast. But real quick, my poll. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see. I have a whopping 53 votes. There's
53
There's 3 hours left.
That's pretty good. 53.
Here's the tweet: 2 bands,
Mm-hmm.
but you can listen to only one for life. Duran Duran or Hall & Oates.
Hall and Oates.
And right now, it's 58.5% Duran Duran,
Whoa.
41.5 for Hall & Oates.
Really? No, I'm Hall and Oates down like 100%.
Well, I see that I was torn. I
Uh-huh.
probably in the end would go with Hall & Oates.
Yeah.
So I got 2 replies. Someone said, anyone who answers Duran Duran is very much out of touch.
Uh-huh.
And then I got, you have a mean streak because I'm making them. Apparently that just means because I'm
Yeah.
leaving them with these 2. And then someone said, you are a monster. I replied, so you're saying I'm a man-eater.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
I won't quit my day job, Joe.
Sarah Smiles. You play that for your girlfriend every once
I
in a while?
actually, we had it on today.
Did you?
I swear to God, we had to get up. I went to my first bar mitzvah today
Uh-huh.
for a family friend. It was great, and we had to get up early on a Saturday.
Lady Gaga there or
She
Jennifer
was not,
Lopez or
unfortunately.
somebody? I always hear about these crazy like acts being flown in for a bar mitzvah.
So we went there. It was great. But in the morning, we were getting ready, and I said, hey, Alexa, play Hall & Oates. And I kept saying skip, skip, skip until it got to
Oh, that's nice.
Sarah.
That's romantic of
Yep.
you.
She smiled, I think,
Well,
just
that's
like the
good.
song.
Well, we'll leave on a bright note. So,
I set off your Alexa.
whoa, Alexa, stop! Wow, that is that's the beauty of doing something live. Things like that can happen. All right, Danny, you have a good one. Till next time.
Adios. Beat Street, king of the beat. See him rocking that beat.